I usually have like Tunningley style
glasses.
kind of glasses. Yeah.
I had laser eye surgery, so I can't.
All right, Smith. You wear fake ones.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like right now, like the three of us there looked intelligent for a second, and you, Smith.
I know.
Yeah, mate.
I've just got. Yeah, I ended up looking like River Phoenix in Explorers. So.
Very good. Beat me to it. Someone's watched the film. Well done.
Oh dear.
Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar. I'll kick it off and let's just see.
Go on, Smith. Ben, you're going to be so shocked at the professionalism of how we enter this podcast.
Yeah.
Hello.
There we go.
We're in. Believe it or not, we're professional. Welcome back to Off Radar.
What, you're getting paid for this?
I am definitely not. I'm paying for this. I'm James Smith, and as always, joined by James Eatock.
Hello.
And Neil Brock.
Hello.
And there's another and.
What?
We have somebody else on this podcast before, a guest. We've never done this on our film review podcast, but today we're also joined by a friend of ours, Ben Tunningley. Hi, Ben.
Hi, how you doing?
We're good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I've never done this before either.
I don't know if that does.
No, what could possibly go wrong?
So why is Ben Tunningley here then, Smith? I think you need to introduce that fact. He's not just a friend who's walked in off the street and demanded to be on our podcast.
Well, I mean, he did, apparently.
He did.
That's what
Well, there's two reasons why he's here. So Ben before has recommended Back Row Banzai, which he's actually got the T-shirt on. We can see there.
Has he really? It's like I've got PTSD.
We're going back through it. And today we are going to review Back Row Banzai again, Eatock.
No, you tricked me.
No, he recommended a film for us to do called Explorers, which came out in 1985. He sent me a couple of voice notes, and his voice notes were so good. I suggested that actually, why don't you just come on here and
listen to you play his voice notes. Listen to You're not allowed to talk. You're only allowed the voice notes. No.
So a good starting point, I guess, is, well, Nige, Eatock, had you seen Explorers before? Nige, seen this one?
It's funny, actually, because I sort of looked up a few years ago, because I've always been a big fan of Joe Dante, the director, sort of best known for sort of Gremlins and a few other things. Like he was involved in Erie, Indiana, which I loved as a kid. And I saw the cast and I thought, wow, this looks really interesting. So I did watch it a few years ago, but I remember absolutely nothing about it. I couldn't even remember if I watched all of the film. So I had to go back and watch it, obviously, for this podcast. So yeah. So I didn't see it when I was like, I guess the ideal age, demographic, whatever for this film. So when it first came out. But yeah, I was certainly intrigued by it.
Nice. Eatock, seen this one?
Yeah, I'd never seen it, never even heard of it. That's how, and to the point where when I watched it the other day, I was like, I didn't even know who was in it. So I was like, is that a young Ethan Hawke? It's like, no, it can't be. It must just be the shadows or the way the light's playing across this young kid's face. And I was like, no, that's definitely Ethan Hawke. And then I was like, the other one, he looks familiar as well. I just didn't. The only one I got was the grizzled old man from Gremlins. You know, the Gremlins. Who's he's like. Well, I wrote down his name. He's always in like a bunch of movies.
He's always in Joe Dante movies. He's like
yes, yeah.
He's been in loads of them. He was also in it, Erie, Indiana as well. I remember him being in it when I was.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah. He's kind of like if you would go as far as calling like Joe Dante an auteur, he's definitely one of the ones. It's part of his almost like troupe of actors. So yeah, you're going to find his name, you talk, or have I got to dig it out?
No, you know me. You're the
Dick
IMDb
Miller.
guy.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, Ben Miller.
Yeah,
Of course, Ben knows.
So Ben, you obviously recommended this film. I take it you've seen this before for us to.
Never seen it before. Like you, I thought that looks like a great cast. We should see the movie. I was the demographic. I was the Star Wars generation, and it was really interesting listening to you all talk about Episode 1 and your different relationships with Star Wars. I was 7 when Star Wars came out. So by 1985, when this came out, I'd had, 6 or 7 years of watching science fiction movies and beginning to think about not only becoming a filmmaker, but going to space and aliens and ray guns. And I used to read Starlog from the States.
Oh, wow.
Starburst from the UK, Cinefantastique, Cinefex. And so I knew Explorers was coming down the line. I'd seen Gremlins, I'd seen The Howling, and I was, beyond excited.
Wow.
And it didn't get a release over here.
Did it not?
Wow, that's blown my trivia
Ben
mind.
just look at
Hence
Ben
why
just
we've probably not heard of it, I guess.
wow.
Yeah.
Ben just broke us there. With that. Is that true? Like, never got a release.
No, I mean it sank in the States because it was released. It came out on the day of Live Aid. Or that
God.
weekend when no one went to the cinema.
Yeah.
And then straight after that, it was up against Back to the Future.
Oh wow!
And it just sank.
Is that any good?
Yeah.
Dear me.
It sank, and so I was. In terms of context for what I may or may not think about this film, I think that might be part of it. Is I was sort of denied the sort of the release of actually seeing the damn thing.
Oh my god, you got all the build up, but none of the payoff.
Yeah.
Almost like a deleted film. When they used to like delete films back in the day, or like ban them.
Video
It kind of
nasty.
made it.
Explorers a video nasty. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Ben, when did you first see it then? Like VHS?
Yeah,
TV?
VHS. It came out, and I don't know when. I meant to look it up, but I imagine it would be the following winter. Late 85, early 86. Obviously, films back then were coming out 6 months later over here anyway.
Yeah.
So it was probably into 1986, and I was 15, and I rented it with a couple of friends. We watched Top Gun first.
Oh.
I think.
Was that for the first time ever as well?
That was for the first time. I hadn't seen Top Gun at that point, I think. And then we watched Explorers, and my friends left, and then I watched Explorers twice again that night.
Okay.
I'd been waiting a long time for this film, and I watched it. And obviously not to give anything away about my feelings for it. I obviously hated it. But so that was where I first encountered it.
Wow.
Oh, nice. Well, I like Etoch, had never heard of it, or like I didn't even know it existed, but I didn't know who directed it or who was in it either. So when you first said about this film, it was quite a surprise. But and like you guys said, directed by Joe Dante. We have actually spoke about Joe Dante a little bit when we did Gremlins a couple of years ago. As Nige said, done quite a few big hitters. A lot around that time: Piranha, Howling, Inner Space, The Burbs, obviously Gremlins 2.
Inner Space. That makes sense to one of the castings in this movie where I was like, I know him from Inner Space. So,
I can't believe you went and didn't say The Burbs after that as well, because
The Burbs.
I love The Burbs, and just like
I used to love that film. Yeah,
Ray, this is Walter. That's one of my
Tom
favourite
Hanks
songs.
and Carrie Fisher as well, not to mention the rest of the cast, but
And the great legend that is now one of the best musical performers on the planet, Corey Feldman.
Is he one of the best musicians on the planet now?
Please, if you ever get a chance, look him up on YouTube, his music career. It's probably, you could go into a rabbit hole and be looking at Corey Feldman's songs and YouTube performances.
Is he acting anymore, or has he just gone straight for music now?
He's gone for music to the point where he's now saying to everybody, I was always a musician, I just happen to be an actor as well. He's so deluded. It's fascinating. His music is awful, where he sings like this, like they try to get you down, they put you on the ground, they leave you lying there, they're broken down and make a sound. Don't you notice them? They check your life again, make you beg from us, and still nobody notice them. Sounds like a rabbit hole I'm not sure I want to go down.
Yeah.
But talking of
it's fun.
child stars, obviously you said Ethan Hawke. I didn't even realise that he was a kid actor, so that was really surprising when he pops up in this film.
Yeah, so this was his first film. He went to the audition, I do know quite a bit about the film, but I actually just, this last week, I watched a couple of things with Joe Dante online, which I didn't know were out there, because he doesn't talk about the film very much. He doesn't really like the film, or at least he had a bad experience of it. And so he was talking about Ethan Hawke and saying he turned up accompanying a friend who was an actor.
That happens so often.
For the audition. Yeah. And Joe Dante saw Ethan Hawke and said, this looks like a good kid. Let's see if he can do anything. And that was it. And so I think, this was mid-80s. By 89, he was in Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, that was like his big sort of follow-up, like 3 or 4 years later. Yeah, and then did White Fang, I remember seeing as well, which was another kind of like Disney
he was in
film.
White Fang, of course he was.
I just didn't clock that he was a child actor, but
yeah. Oh, no, I didn't either, yeah.
Like, I just see him as a grown-up. But fine, fair enough.
Accept it, Ben. That's a good enough explanation. We will move on.
Smith has approved.
I approve. Done. As we say, River Phoenix, who plays Wolfgang in this film, tragically, I guess most known for being probably Joaquin's brother, but also tragically died to a drug overdose.
I'd have said he's most known for being like young Indy in Crusade.
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me as well.
He's probably.
Yeah. Wasn't he in that film with Keanu Reeves? My Own Private Idaho as well, which was really well received around the time Gus Van Sant.
He was the first of the brothers, wasn't he, that really sort of broke out. So for a while, Joaquin was known for being River's brother, and wasn't Joaquin Leaf Phoenix or Summer Phoenix or something? Yeah. They all had names
hippie
like
names,
that, but
basically. Yeah. They sort of grew up in like South America. They had a family that was a bit hippie-ish, and sort of pushed them into the creative arts and all that kind of stuff, and sort of stemmed into those kind of full-blown careers. I've got a feeling the kids were kind of like supporting the parents, as can often happen in these kind of situations as well. And River Phoenix was just kind of seen as this remarkable actor, and this, as we kind of said, was his first ever film. So, and like one of the things about the fact his upbringing was so sort of unique and strange, there was quite a lot of bits in the film that they had scripted that like sort of almost like cool sayings for kids around that era, and he would keep pronouncing them wrong because he'd never heard of it before. It'd be like saying cool, and he'd be like cool, because he just didn't know. And like people would sort of be like, who is this kid? But obviously he kind of blew them away and went on to have a great career till it ended up at, I think it was Johnny Depp's club, the Viper Room or something.
Yeah, it was the Viper Room. Yeah, that's where he passed away.
Yeah, was tragically young. So
wait, Nige, you said this was River Phoenix's first film, because you said Ben said it was Thingy's, Ethan Hawke's, but it was also River Phoenix's.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
River Phoenix had done TV, I think, up to this point. So he was acting for a while, but this was his first feature.
Wow.
When did Stand By Me come out then? Was that
87, was it? Or something like that?
Was it really?
I think it was a little bit later.
It says 86, A Mosquito Coast as well, with old Harrison Ford. And
86.
Is that Helen Mirren in that as well, I think?
Yeah.
That's my next recommendation.
Oh, really?
Just going year by year, 86, 8.
Yeah. Well, for this one, I think it only feels relevant that the synopsis comes from our guest and our recommended of this film. pretty much butchered that, Smith. Just go. Let me do that again.
Ben's going to give us a synopsis.
And Ben, I asked you to do a synopsis.
You did, and so that I don't mangle it and mess up on the recording, I thought I'd write something down.
That's what we always do, don't worry.
So the way I went into it, an all-American boy in a small town dreams of escaping to the stars.
Wait a minute, Ben. Are you just reciting Springsteen lyrics here? I know you.
Funny you should mention Springsteen.
It sounded like the Journey song to me. Just a small town boy.
Guys, this is with aliens.
ChatGPT got them mixed up when I typed it in. So the kid, Ben Crandall, and two unlikely friends are sent the secrets of a technology to help them transform an old fairground ride into a spaceship. Okay, I'm definitely reading this now. A member of local law enforcement tries to track them down. They travel into space and eventually meet a pair of aliens. The finale involves a conversation based around Earth's popular culture. The aliens are... Can I go to the end of the film? Or do you want to hang on to
Well,
that?
he talked lots of ... So
I love ending with an ellipsis.
they meet some aliens, and what crazy things happen next.
Yeah.
But I think actually... Yeah, they meet some aliens and, I mean, ... But I think...
There you go, that's perfect.
They were just like everyone else. They dreamed of going to the stars. But unlike everyone else...
What's going on here?
They discovered a way to get there.
You dreamt it, I felt it, and it's our secret. It's pretty neat, huh?
Then, they took it one step further.
I christened the Thunder Road.
And it worked.
Look how fast we're going. I bet we could go anywhere. Do you realize what it means?
Now, they're about to find out just how far it can go.
Let's face it, somebody's calling us.
Let's go.
All around the world. Did you see what I saw? Roll is the only place.
They're here.
All around the world. Rock and roll is the only place.
I guess right at the start of this film, we open in this kind of like, well, we see, like you say, the kid's bedroom and stuff, and straight up from the off, like you notice the typical kind of 80s bedroom, and this kid is obviously massively obsessed with space, but you get all those kind of knickknacks around the room that kind of, it could be in any of those sort of Spielbergian films around that time, like or adventure films, like Flight of the Navigator, Batteries Not Included, Goonies, Stand By Me, like all of those films. It feels like I could be entering that world, and it's quite interesting that this never got a release. I
find it interesting that he's watching War of the Worlds. I was like, I know War of the Worlds.
Oh yeah, he is, isn't he?
Yeah,
and that's right. It's on the TV, but he's kind of drifting off into sleep and having this dream, and the kind of the blue clouds that kind of come back throughout the film. But then, quite interestingly, we get these almost like Tron computer graphics. And
I kept thinking to myself watching that.
Enter the Tron thing, because we did Tron on the podcast, so that was quite good. A good reference. But I was
thinking to myself watching those scenes, like, how long did this take to render?
Yeah.
Just, because it's 19. I mean, obviously it had come some way since Tron, but I was just looking at it thinking this sequence, and it was quite a long sequence, that first one we see where they're going over kind of this all these kind of alien circuit board kind of things, and I just thought to myself, that's a lot of time. That's like a year of rendering, or at least 200 computers. Nigel's looking it up right now.
No. I was just going to render it myself and see if it takes 3 seconds. So,
He's done it on his iPhone.
But I think that whole sequence, I think what's interesting about, starting in the bedroom and going into the dream, you've got War of the Worlds, so sort of 50s science fiction, which is what Joe Dante grew up with, and what we in the 80s and through the 70s also grew up with, and so the sort of more modern filmmaking techniques were still coming through, and you kind of couldn't really watch anything at home unless it was on TV. So I used to watch all the old classics as well, so that really sort of resonated. So you've got sort of 50s level of special effects on the TV. You've then got going into the dream, where you've got ILM sort of cloud tank effects for the sort of environment that they're flying through in green screen, or however they did that, and then and so practical effects, because it would have been a cloud tank that they shot for that plate, and then the computer element, so bringing it right up to date in what they see through the cloud. So it was all sort of that sort of decades of filmmaking technique condensed into that first 3 minutes of the film.
That's a really good point, yeah.
I think you also noticed straight up, which I thought we would get to quite soon, is the music as well by Jerry Goldsmith. So obviously teaming up again after Gremlins, but I mean he's done loads of stuff. But yeah, the music in this film. Well, I guess I kind of show my hand a little bit. Oh, wow.
Of course he's got the.
So Ben is holding up a vinyl.
That's actually I like that cover.
It's beautiful artwork. Yeah.
That's almost like
It's like what's this? Spielberg's film.
Well, this is the thing. Like, part of the reason that I think Spielberg was interested in being involved in this film, because it was a script that was floating around Hollywood for quite a long time. And on the vinyl that Ben's just shown, there's a couple of like kids BMXs. Obviously, one of the most iconic scenes from ET is the riding the bikes in the air. And I think it was Wolfgang, the guy who did Neverending Story, was kind of attached to do this film. Like
Peterson.
Yes, I think so. And Spielberg was kind of pushing to get this all set up. So again, like, not only was this a film where, like you said, Ben, it was like the perfect time for this kind of combination of space and kids and all that kind of stuff, but it was also like off the back of some like really impressive people pushing it. But as you say, it didn't necessarily land. And it's interesting that is the kind of artwork for the vinyl, because it doesn't, for me, kind of really show what the film is. So
it doesn't. That was the poster. I have the poster. I didn't have a chance to put it up on the wall behind me, I can only apologise. But the poster is a one-sheet version of that.
Wow.
The tagline is "The adventure starts in your own backyard." And it has, and you know, that doesn't appear in the film. I watched the film again this week because it has been. I watched it 6 months ago, I think.
I was going to say, it's been 2 weeks.
Going through it 3 times in one night, you slowly come down from that level. So, yeah.
But this time I noticed there is a shot where there is a bit of a broken fence and a bike and something bins and stuff, which looks a bit like the poster, but I think that's purely coincidental. They did their own thing, and it absolutely evokes Spielberg and that whole thing, and us in a way doesn't give anything away, which is lovely, but maybe hides some of the things that they feel also might let the film down. So
I was going to say, like with film posters, it's always a fascinating kind of. Not to go into another tangent, but you don't want to give too much away, but you also want to sell the film to the right audience. I once attended a thing when I worked at the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. We went I think it was like a 2-day away day. I can't remember what film company it would have been in Soho. This is when like Soho was the hub for filmmaking or post-production. And we sat there whilst they showed us all the posters, hundreds of posters for this classic film that everybody remembers from the year 2000. I think it was called Whatever Happened to Jimmy Grimble.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That's a football film, isn't it? Jimmy Grimble.
Yeah.
I think Man City has a pair of boots.
I think it might have Robert Carlyle in it, maybe.
I quite like that film. So.
Someone...
Mainly because of the poster.
But my point is, they showed us all, it felt like hundreds of posters, and they were just showing this is trying to show this and this and this, and I mean, I think the film just bombed completely. So I mean, it's amazing how much a poster can do. And these days, I think we'll all agree that posters seem so bloody generic. Bunch of photoshopped heads, especially photoshopped heads, all like the big action films.
Where they often just put the star at the centre of a poster, don't they? Like, here's Tom Cruise smash in the middle of it.
I understand what they did with all the recent kind of Star Wars films. They were trying to evoke those Drew Struzan posters. But it's like, just get Struzan to do the bleeding posters, for goodness sake, because I
always remember was it AI, the Spielberg film? I always remember the poster for that being awesome, because it's just like a kind of light and the little boy, and I remember the trailer being really good.
Is he holding hands with the robot? Is that the...
I don't know if it's... That might be Bicentennial Man.
It always comes back to Bicentennial Man. Let's be honest. But I mean, posters kind of go through those phases as well. We were talking, I think, in the Dodgeball podcast the other week, which Ben hasn't heard yet. No. Chap, he's not had the chance to, but how there was that whole white background with red writing, a few people of the cast, like The Wedding Crashers, for instance, Knocked Up, all those kind of films had a very distinct poster style almost, and yeah, things come in and out of fashion. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, for me at that age, it was like, oh, I'm Ethan Hawke because I'm obviously the star of the film and I'm thinking about space. And then there's the sidekick nerdy guy, and I'm sure I had one of those in my collection of friends. And then there's the sort of jock character, the cool, you know, seems older because he's got a motorbike, although he's not older. And that was absolutely a trope of any number of sort of high school kids through the films through the 50s and 60s, and it was a neat little sort of triumvirate that they crafted for themselves. It wasn't very subtle.
No, he's cool. He doesn't need to be cool. He doesn't care about being cool, that kind of thing. But I
was going to say, because both of our main three, they're all like outcasts. They're all misfits, and obviously, you know, they get beaten up. And I guess we see this quite a lot in these sort of films. Like, you're kind of identifying and kind of heroing with those kids that are just on the edge. They're not necessarily the coolest one, but River Phoenix, like for me, like Stand By Me is a really good reference point. It feels like such a departure from that sort of role.
So much so.
Because he's like, he's dressed like, well, like the 50s thing is great. I didn't clock that, but maybe. But, you know, he's dressed like an adult for the whole film. He wears a tie. He's got, like, often, like, a science coat on. He's got big, like, Deirdre Barlow glasses. And, you know, he looks like a professor. But then his whole family, who I take it are German.
Yeah, they're like a German family, definitely,
They're, like, caricatures, and he's... You know, they're like quite big in the film, whereas the other families are not. They you know, the mum's kind of dots in for Ethan Hawke's character a little bit, but other than that,
well, they're good actors as well, aren't they? It's like the guy who's in like loads of stuff like LA Confidential and Babe, and then the mum's the woman from like Addams Family, but she's been in loads of stuff as well. Dana Ivey, I think the mum is. She was in like The Colour Purple and Sabrina, and it's almost like tiny little roles that they bring gravitas to, but they're barely in it, but they help shape his character. Like, if you weren't sure what he's supposed to be, they make it like really apparent. So
I wonder if they called him Wolfgang after Wolfgang Petersen, after what you said, Nige.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Maybe that was a little nod to him. But he feels like, and I absolutely get it, they cast him against type because apparently he was a cool kid. And so they took him in a very different direction because I guess they found their sort of hero character. And it feels like he's the big misstep for me, or one of the missteps, because I just don't think he's very good. He's sort of overplaying it. He's like a caricature. Yeah. Whereas Ethan Hawke and Jason Preston are really naturalistic, really sort of understated.
It feels like the wrong casting to me, like having River Phoenix in this role. I'd much prefer him as Ethan Hawke's character and being a little bit more of I'm
pretty sure he went for that role, but they cast him in the other one as well, which kind of makes sense because I think he could have done, as you say, either role quite easily. But there was clearly something about him, that kind of like slight disconnect from having a slightly unusual upbringing, that made them think he had the range to do it.
It felt like they were just like, oh, he's really cool, let's give him the role of the geeky one. It just feels like the total opposite to his character. And, well, you know, not to his character, but for like what he then goes on to play in many films, and probably what he's like, you know, behind the camera as he was a very cool kid and young adult. But
I was going to say, like, Wolfgang's Family is kind of, it feels like it's from a different movie kind of thing, like a much younger, skewed movie, because you've got like the home life of the kind of cool kid, and he, you know, it sounds like he's got an abusive father to some degree, although we don't find out really too much about that. The other one comes from, you know, Ethan Hawke's character. You see his mum, and he seems like a rather lovely home life, and then you get Wolfgang, and it's like, oh, it's almost like a Saturday morning cartoon kind of thing. It's like, we're a crazy German family. And I do like the zaniness when they're at the kind of table and there's a kid with a mask like throwing food and eating food and all that. And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, it's just like, this feels like it's from a different movie or something. That's what I felt watching. I was like,
tonally, there's all sorts of things going on at odds with each other in the film, and I think some of that absolutely works, and I think that's something that Joe Dante does in most of his films.
He does with Gremlins when Phoebe Cates is talking about her dad killing himself. Happy Christmas. Yeah, great scene, but it's just like, oh my God.
So I clearly that's something that he enjoys playing with, but it feels like you say, Wolfgang and the family are such an extreme. There's the sort of kitchen sink drama of Darren, the third kid, and his and the dad that we never see. And the other thing I learned this week, not to tread on you, Nige, just in case this was going to come up later,
tread away,
was that they had shot family scenes for Ethan Hawke's character, for Ben.
Right.
Not only his mum, but his dad.
Wow.
And his brother, who is still in the film. His brother is in the film because his brother is the slightly older kid in the drive-in movie.
Oh, that's
in
him
the
who's
car saying, "Oh, that looks so fake."
Yeah. Wow.
That was the brother, and they just cut loads and loads out, including all the family stuff. And in a way, I mean, it's the film is really tight. It's really streamlined, and it's almost 2 hours long. So it's not a short film.
No,
but you can imagine there's another version of this which is really bloated.
The original opening cut was like 3 hours and 15 minutes.
3 hours.
Yeah. So when they first started to put it together, and that's bearing in mind, like, again, sort of going into the realms of trivia, like, there was a lot that they wanted to do that the studio kind of forced them to abandon, and just, we want to get this film out for the big kind of summer release. So
didn't they bring it forward? That it was going to be sort of end of August, and then they turned around and said, we want it for the July 4th weekend. So he lost 2 months of production, and again, he's on record as saying, we just had to stop editing.
Yeah,
they were just like,
release what you've got. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And just to go back as well to a point we were discussing earlier, it was actually Darren that River Phoenix went in for the role for, and that kind of suits a lot of the roles he played sort of later in his career, that kind of, like that kind of cool kid that's got a little bit of edge. So it was strange that he ended up cast as Wolfgang, but regardless of who was cast at what, like, Joe Dante's hands were tied with this film. And it's clearly a film that is kind of split into different sections. You've obviously got the beginning where the classic, you're introducing the characters. You've got the kind of middle section where they're kind of they're teaming up. They're trying to learn more and more about it. They're sort of experimenting, and there's some kind of interesting scenes. And then you've got the end, which just seems completely different to anything else you've seen before. So.
It's very different. It's funny when they team up. They obviously have these dreams things, and they think, right, we're going to make this spaceship, and it's like this naff kind of 80s montage.
I do love the design of it. It's pretty cool.
But they just get like loads of junk and just put it together to make this ball sort of thing.
It's a tilt-a-whirl foundation, and then they kind of add this bit to it, and like a random door. And I think the top is like almost like a suitcase like bag or something, where because when they get in, they pull it down. I was just like, that's
and obviously before this, they've had this interesting scene with the two of them. I think it's the two of them, and Wolfgang creates this round.
You're right. Yeah,
like CG ball type thing, which obviously back then is probably like not an easy thing to do in kind of visual effects, and it kind of is, like flubber, like the blasts around the room type thing. But yeah, and then they kind of base it on that, and obviously the computers as well. It's probably worth pointing out that the technology back then, where Wolfgang's like inputting all this stuff, like to us now, it just like oh yeah, that looks really awful, but actually, again, like he's kind of visualizing the dream that he's had through this Tron stroke space thing and bringing it to life to create this spaceship. So, exploring thing to begin with, isn't it? They don't actually go into space until a little bit later, but that's the dream, as it were, no pun intended.
Well, talking about the ball, as you said, like, it wasn't CG because there wasn't really CG. Like ILM, as Ben mentioned earlier, this is kind of one of the first films they kind of were really heavily involved in, like both on the production side and the development. But they couldn't obviously produce it in the way that you would expect a modern film. They had to write it in like a C language to create the program, and then redraw a 3D wireframe scene in real time. So it was actually being sort of almost layered over the top, not produced beforehand. And the moment the energy sphere on the screen like appears, it was actually being controlled by a guy with a mouse in real time, which to me, I can't even visualize visualize how they managed to do this. It sounds absolutely insane. But like the director was like, go left, go right kind of thing, and how they did it. And obviously you'd have things exploding and doing all the various things. And
yes, it's a perfect mix between practical and optical effects, I guess, or if it's ILM.
Well, I love the idea that he pretty much like destroys the entire basement, the fridge, everything, and it's just never mentioned again. It's just like, just another crazy experiment in the basement. Oh well. So but
and when they get the sort of oxygen add-on later on, and one of the buildings explodes. I'm guessing it's his garage or something. Yeah.
I think it's his shed or something, and it's like, it's my dad's shed.
We killed 20 people. Okay.
Did you know you can now subscribe to Off Radar? It's a movie podcast on YouTube. You can watch exclusive trailers and listen to brand new full episodes. All links and info in the description down below.
Somebody stop me!
I'll jump into like my first like criticism of the movie, like the sequence as kind of fun as it is, and this kind of occurs a few times in the movie when they're building the ship. That montage goes on for so long. I was just like, how is this still going? Like, I understand building a ship and it's kids and it's supposed to be exciting and stuff, but they're building it and it's just like, I almost wanted just to see some blueprints on a table, like as cliched as that sounds, and then you see them kind of assembling it. But I'm sure it went on for like 3 or 4 minutes.
No, it was longer than that, and the reason is
it's longer than that.
The reason is because you've got Jerry Goldsmith, Jerry Goldsmith, and The Construction, which is the track that starts the original record. And he wrote this quite long piece. I mean, obviously it was to fit the edit. So it wasn't that he just went crazy and they said, we better make the sequence.
I feel like Jerry might have done that, but yeah.
He might have done. No, it's true. And,
Jerry.
He had form. They had Star Trek The Motion Picture, which was his sort of late 70s opus. And you've got the 6-minute Enterprise.
It's funny, Ben, that's in my notes. I was going to bring this up. Like, I was actually going to bring it up in my kind of review. But yeah, the whole... I will say, though, for the motion picture, I used to hate Star Trek The Motion Picture. I mean, I wasn't a big Star Trek fan. I went back and watched it, I'd say about 5 or 6 years ago. Fucking loved it. Because it's when you think about what that film was representing, not that we're going on a Star Trek tangent here, but the motion picture was going... Remember that TV show in the 60s you used to watch on small TVs? Now we're going to put on a big screen, and... One of the things that Star Trek never gets enough credit for is it was never about space battles and all this. It was always about the personal stories, the morality of humankind or space or whatever, and the motion picture celebrates the basics of Star Trek, but on like a bigger scale. And so you get all these long shots, but I never found them monotonous. I really enjoyed the motion picture. I did in subsequent viewings.
And part of that was absolutely Jerry Goldsmith scoring huge sequences when he was scoring it in the final weeks of production of black, because they hadn't done the effects, and he was basically scoring the script that he read and what he was imagining. And I think it's something that certainly Joe Dante has said about him, because they collaborated on, I don't know, 7 films, 8 films, something like that, was that he always scored a better film than he was actually working on. Yeah. And he never phoned it in. And I've got a lot of Goldsmith scores, and some of them are for terrible films, but the scores are fabulous. And he always did. And I mean, back to your point about how long this sequence is, I'm sure they weren't at the time going, what the kids in the audience are really going to want is 6 minutes of orchestral music. That's going to be... But I think... It absolutely works in the context of the film, because it's the... Again... being that age when I originally saw it, and I suppose was the sort of target audience, and especially at that time, that's how we made our fun. I could be doing that, and I want to live with these people and be experiencing this. So I don't want to just see the blueprints.
And the finished product.
Crash zoom into the blueprints and then suddenly there it is. I want to see them actually physically making this thing with some amazing music under it. So I would defend that scene.
The other weird thing I wanted to bring up, like quite early on in this film, is this love interest that he has.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very awkward because he basically kind of stalks her. And
it's 1980s.
Yeah, that's
You're allowed
fine.
to stalk.
You're allowed to stalk. You're allowed to rape in bloody Revenge of the Nerds. So
it gets more awkward later when the alien makes a comment. What does he say? Hubba hubba, I'd like to get my cuffs on her.
Get my cups on her. As in his little cups. But yeah, her story arc is fantastic, I found. She had one of the most well thought out story arcs where she stands in a window and later she's flying through a dreamscape with him.
In a night dress.
To be fair, that standing in the window scene wasn't in the original cut. They added that later. So there you go.
Really?
So
did they really?
Yeah, it was deleted, was filmed, deleted from the theatrical release, and then put back in for subsequent releases because they were like, we need to add more to her story. What does she do? She brushes her hair and he stares longingly at her. Okay,
oh dear.
Sold.
I mean, saying that I thought the casting of River Phoenix was one of the missteps. This is the other thing. It's aged really badly. I was going to, for my synopsis at the beginning of this chat, I was going to say this film is about a promising young woman that discovers she's a love interest for some later kid, and then turns up in a night dress at the end for a kiss.
That'd been amazing.
It's shocking, and I think at the time, and I don't remember exactly what I thought, but I'm sure at the time I went, oh, that's so cute, and I want to be like him, and I want to meet a girl, and of course you would sort of
I'm still
climb
like
a
him.
tree and but
he took standing out someone's
I was going to say, all women, don't brush your hair in visibility of your window. Danger.
No.
Yeah, I mean, what they're trying to do is, exactly, give this character a little bit more depth.
Absolutely.
And the kind of love thing is done in so many films, but I think it just doesn't really work in this film, especially when it's about three young boys kind of, I don't know, exploring. Yeah, I don't know what is the point of this film. That is one of my questions. What is the?
I feel like you're jumping ahead there, Smith.
Maybe I am a little bit. Maybe we'll get to the third act first before I ask that.
Well, I was just going to say about her as a character in this film. They could have done it so easily. Just had her show up at one point and be like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" Or just anything else to add a little bit of substance to that kind of middle section beyond just nothing. Or even when they're at the top of the hill, and they hide the spear from her. But yeah.
Even if she was in, some of those scenes where she's part of it, but she's not part of this group. Normally, if you have the kind of love interest that's part of this group, it can work quite well because it kind of gives all the characters their purpose in the film. But she's not at all. Basically, she's just on the outskirts, and it's oh yeah, I fancy her. I guess we should get to this third act where they actually get to space then, and obviously land on this spaceship and meet these crazy green snail-like alien things.
Firstly, aliens, amazing their costumes, and I was just like,
their costumes.
Those are sorry, Nige, they're not real.
What?
I was just like, those are incredible, and looking at those, I just kept thinking, man, if when you see sometimes CG creatures of this kind of ilk in films, it looks CG, and we know these are costumes, but there's such a realism to they almost look, you see the moisture on them and everything, and all the animatronics with the blinking and stuff, and I was just like, that's some phenomenal work. And obviously, I guess ILM were involved in that as well, in the costumes.
It was Rob Bottin, who was, I think, his own sort of entity, and specialised in prosthetics and that sort of thing. And they are extraordinary.
They're amazing. The big one, who we won't spoil yet, at the end, when he turns, I was like, that costume's even more incredible. And
the fact they all make kind of loads of, I don't know, quiz shows and TV and Tarzan, they look like they're kind of channeling. They're almost like the aliens from The Simpsons. They're channeling
oh, what are their names? Another ones.
Zod.
Zod, something like that.
They're kind of channeling frequencies to try and make the boys identify with them or something like that, I think.
Kang and Kodos, apparently.
Kang and Kodos. One thing I just want to jump back to just very briefly, because I think it's a point worth bringing up. We get the smallest of subplots with what's the actor from Gremlins, the old man,
Dick Miller.
Dick Miller.
Yeah.
Yes.
He shows up, and you think, right, where's the?
He sees them from a helicopter, so they're like policemen who are in a helicopter that happen to see this sort of strange little vehicle flying around bizarrely in the sky, and then he tracks them down because they leave their
things sort of thing where they're kind of like, you think it's going to be this kind of sinister other thing that has become a big, like scientific thing that they're actually investigating, but they don't come back to that at all, do they?
I didn't think Dick Miller, I think very soon with Dick Miller, you see he has that phone conversation with someone, and he's clearly like, oh, he's like a young explorer too, because he says like, oh, something about dreaming, and I was just like, oh, right, so he's not the he's not like the antagonist or something. He's just like someone who's on. Oh God, Ben, you've got something on your mind.
No, I think you're right. I think he is put forward as the antagonist because there isn't. There isn't that sort of classic structure. At least classic. I say it's something we're probably more used to these days. There isn't a bad guy. There is someone who appears to be the antagonist. So you get a bit of drama, a bit of tension. But what you end up with is, and I think there are a series of parallels through the film, and he's one of them because he's the parallel to Ethan Hawke's character. I wrote down the quote you just mentioned. I wrote it down the other day. I've been having dreams about this lately. The weird thing is I haven't had dreams like this since I was a kid. And I think that's it. It's evoking, and watching this as a kid, I probably just ignored it. I knew who Dick Miller was, but I'm like, he's flying around. He's a gruff man, and they escaped from him. That's great. What I watch now, that's what resonates.
Yeah, I get it.
And it's sort of, in a way, the film is much more melancholy now as an older viewer. And although there are the sort of triumphant moments and the fun and the escapism. The Superman pose at the very end. But actually, what really stands out is those really bittersweet moments of the kid's disappointment at the end, of Dick Miller sort of identifying with this kid and wishing he was having this adventure. I think his last line is nice going, kid. Yeah.
I was just like, that's a good line, man. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because his character, like, he flies a helicopter. I can't remember if he's actually the pilot or not, but even so, he gets to like look at things from the sky. So he kind of still is an explorer in one sense. So maybe he did kind of achieve his dream. He didn't sort of what do they say? If you aim for the stars, you might hit the moon, or whatever it is. I can't remember what the saying is, but he got somewhere.
It's like Toy Story.
All right, Confucius.
Okay. Confucius. Yeah.
Back to the spaceship. Sorry to derail that.
No, that's right. Yeah. I think there's one moment where the alien, or one of the aliens, sings Little Richard all around the world, and that
was that Little Richard?
Almost that whole performance. But yeah, that's a really, really nice bit. And then when all the aliens are kind of doing all this weird, it does get a bit kind of. It's so weird compared to the other part of the film.
It was 6 minutes of stand up, and I was like, I kind of want this to end, and I hate whoever recommended this film. I hope I never have to face them on a like. Surely they wouldn't. Oh no, it was bad.
Why am I here?
I just think, but that scene where he's doing. I get it. Nige. Well, actually, both of you, Nige, and actually all three of you have seen the film I'm about to reference. Transformers the movie. Wreck-Gar. Yeah. Loves his pop culture references. We get it for about 5-10 seconds, and we get the character. With this, it's like this stand-up routine. It's just like, okay, yeah, that's good. Then it goes on. I'm like, oh my, because at first I thought, oh, they're doing the not classic, but they're doing the thing of, they use kind of, they've grown up with TV, or well, we don't know they're growing up, as it were, but they know of Earth TV, so a lot of their communication is TV based, and that's their point of reference. And it's like, okay, I get that. And then it's like, yep, they're still doing this. And then they do the song, and I was like, man, this is going on quite a while. And then I did like this though. The twist is I thought really good, where they're like the space pirates, and you're like, oh, right, now. I kept thinking, now the bad guys are here. Here's the baddies. But I thought, there's only 19 minutes to go. This can't be right. And then the baddie turns up, and that is the twist. I thought, like, oh, that's good. That's good. I'll let one of you.
Before we get to that, I think I'm going to have to defend it again, aren't I? But
go for it.
I like that end sequence. I think just as much as we start the film with Ethan Hawke's character looking at science fiction films and connecting with this idea of understanding what aliens might be, and the fact that there is even the potential for alien life and the adventure that might indicate. You've then got the sort of flip of that with the aliens at the end, where yes, their frame of reference is what's been beamed through space from Earth. And yes, it's a very long sequence of lots of pop culture references, and some of them are sort of tied into specific bits of dialogue. So yes, it's quite long. I'm assuming the music, that track was there for rights reasons. You know, they wanted to. There's a version of that song on the soundtrack, and that was the big thing especially at the time, was that album is half of Jerry Goldsmith and half of pop songs. Of course. So that's why that's there, I think.
Yeah, I was listening to the Tron soundtrack the other day. It does exactly the same thing. There's half of this almost orchestral, like the slightly futuristic stuff, and then suddenly there's just like a random 80s band, and you're like, okay. Yeah, he listens to it in the car for 4 seconds during the film.
It's always that sort of hunt for the song, and I did that, and like one of the songs when Steve Jackson is beating up Ethan Hawke at the beginning, and Darren, he's got the headphones on, you can hear one of the songs coming through the headphones for, like you say, 4 seconds, and it's on the album. But with the aliens, I think it hits even harder when they say that they haven't, I can't remember quite how they sort of express it, but they haven't visited because they assume they'd be killed. And then you see that scene from The Day the Earth Stood Still. Goldsmith's music goes really quite powerful in this sort of very minor mode. And you see the sequence of the soldier shooting Michael Rennie's character, and it's repeated a couple of times. The shot, it's the way it's edited, the shot's repeated, and I feel that that's the payoff from all the sort of light and fluffy pop culture. That's the payoff, and that's why it's worth having that long scene.
Your people have been visiting our planet for since ancient times, and now you've come back to check up on us and explain everything, right?
It's a very interesting story. It doesn't make any sense at all. Are you aware of that?
Actually, they've never been down there in person. There's too many germs.
Germs that can cause colds, bad breath, diarrhea. Germs that can flourish in your family bathroom.
Ethan Hawke gets up there and he says, like, we don't do that. Like, I mean, yes, we kill people, but not like this. And it's like, I understand like that kind of hitting home, and I think,
and Etok, you've hit on the line of dialogue which I think is absolutely at the core of this. And again, I wrote it down because I can't remember it.
Do it.
Ethan Hawke says when he's confronted with the footage from Day the Earth Stood Still, this isn't real, and we don't really kill people. Well, we do, but not aliens, because we haven't met any. And I think that's so, and it's a moment that's gone, but it's really damning, and it's more true now than it was then. And it's kind of a punch. But you're, as a kid watching it, it just goes straight over you, and you're either having fun with the film or you're incredibly bored and wished you hadn't gone to see it. But yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Like, you kind of mentioned all this. There's like Looney Tunes references. There's loads of different stuff at that point, and that's something I've seen Joe Dante do before. Like, even Gremlins has a lot of references to other things, and he did one of the segments of The Twilight Zone, the movie, where it was like a kid who basically becomes like the runner of a household, and there's loads of like cartoon references to that as well.
Nancy Cartwright, voice of Bart
There
Simpson.
You go. So I think, as you mentioned, Ben, like the way that Joe Dante has obviously been influenced by guy's childhood. And there's little touches all the way through the film. I think when they build the spaceship, there's the sled from like Citizen Kane's, like sat on top of the pile. In his basement, there's a toy monkey from like Close Encounters. There's a few little bits like that where it's like clearly Joe Dante's kind of just put all these little nudges and winks to his audience, essentially.
The Looney Tunes is a good reference. Chuck Jones, who the animator, who was in Gremlins. He's in the bar scene.
Yes, that's right.
He's in Gremlins, and the high school at the beginning of Explorers is the Charles M. Jones High School.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. So,
wow.
So he's just laying as much as he can, and it's sort of meaningless in a way. It's kind of fun if you know or you spot it, but it's also
cool.
I don't know if when you do know that stuff, it's kind of an extra fun little bit of depth.
Well, like I'm hesitant to mention Marvel movies, but for instance, like there's so many like nudges and winks.
Always mention them, Nige.
I know, I can't help myself. But from like every film, there's always like a little nudge, or like, oh, do you know from the comic books, or maybe one of the 700 films as part of this series, and it's like a little thing for that viewer to be like, oh, I'm special because I recognise that, and it is a technique that people use all the time, absolutely, and people do get more from it. I think one of the aliens, I think it's Wack's first word is like, "What's up, Doc?" And it's like, there you go, bang. This isn't subtle, but it's not intended to be. And I love the way as well, like when they go to the drive-through, they've got like the like schlocky like sci-fi film up on the screen, and during like the post Star Wars release, there was loads of like, I think like Italian films that did like real cheap knockoff versions, and it's almost like an homage to the knockoff Star Wars films. And it's like, there's so much that Joe Dante's got into this film that I imagine wasn't on the script, because again, it was a really like well-known script at the time. It was being passed from studio to studio. I'm pretty sure there wasn't like let's do like a Looney Tunes skit at the end, and let's reference all sorts of different things. And it's just, he obviously had fun with it, but didn't get to push it quite as far as he did. But then it also has that feeling, and he's kind of backed this up in kind of like director's commentaries and interviews since, that the script wasn't fully formed when they started, and the executive producers and the people at the studio were just like, oh, you'll figure it out, which strikes me as a very kind of, I mean, it's happened all through kind of Hollywood history, but certainly in the 80s, I think they were just like, it'll come together, it'll be great, it'll be fine. Oh, it's a disaster. But in terms of making money, not necessarily the output, but sometimes it is as well.
But we get the twist, the reveal. Go on, Smith.
Well, it's just this huge space pirate thing, but actually it's this huge, great, big alien. What is the twist? Go on, tell me.
This is Dad.
He's the dad.
Of who?
Smith didn't even get it. Oh no!
No,
I did not get that.
Because basically,
he was telling off.
I think it's one of the kids is looking and just like kind of going, they don't speak the language, and it's like, actually, one little thing I just want to shout out: the voice of the Big Dad alien is 100%. Even before I saw the end credits, I was like, that's Frank Welker. Frank Welker's like,
okay.
I think you look up Frank Welker on IMDb, he's got like the longest. Well, no, he's got the highest rated IMDb. If you were to put all these movies together, he's like the highest earner, because he's done so many special effects, vocal special effects in films, and obviously he's done cartoons, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s now. And I met him, and I saw him do a performance of the Garfield cartoon many years ago. But he's a great like guy, and he's an awesome vocal performer. But he's like going all this like voice stuff, and then one of the kids is like looking. He's like, he kind of looks. He's like, I think. He's like, they're kids. Like, this is the dad. Like, I'm paraphrasing.
Well, it's Darren, isn't it? Because he's got the
Darren's
angry dad at home.
Oh my God, that is it.
He's drunk. He's got a drunk deadbeat dad.
Right.
And so he's standing there and he's looking between them, and he goes, "It's their father."
Yeah. And they've stolen the ship and gone.
They've stolen their dad's car.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. I did not get that.
Smith's going to reassess it now in his head quickly before he gives it a rating. That kind of makes sense.
10 stars.
It's heading up to 10 now. But I did love. But it was. I really enjoyed that twist, though. That did make me kind of laugh out loud. But I didn't put it together that it was Darren. Like, I mean, the reason he understood the very shouty father figure was because he has a very shouty father figure.
There's layers to this, E-Talk. Come on.
Yeah, all right. But one of the things I laughed about, though, is when they do that reveal and like the aliens are trying to explain, it's like, basically we were just trying to be cool around you. We were meeting you for the first time. We wanted to be, you're meeting aliens for the first time. We want to be cool, which I thought was like, this is a really kind of satisfying twist kind of thing. And there's one throwaway line that I laughed out loud at because it's so good, where they're kind of saying, goodbye, and the young boy alien goes, yeah, and we didn't get to tell you the secrets of the universe.
I knew you were going to say that. I wrote that one down as well. Yeah,
it's such a good line because it's almost done off camera, but it's so funny because it's sort of like done very subtly and not right in there, where they're like, it's almost as Ethan Hawke's turning away. But and then obviously the ship, they depart very quickly, and it is the. Go on, Ben.
Oh, so I'm just going to say that's I guess that's the final parallel, isn't it? That you go, oh, the aliens are kids as well.
Yeah,
they're all kids, and
they're explorers as well. Yeah.
And you get this final sort of dream sequence as well, don't you? And then we have this line which I wrote down, which is right at the end of the film, and it's, if this is all a dream, what happens when we wake up?
What happens when we wake up?
I don't know, but I can't wait to find out.
Fly at us.
Explorers.
We come in peace.
The adventure begins in your own backyard.
I will say, like, the soundtrack for this is it's Jerry Goldsmith. It's so striking.
I think obviously we did First Blood on the podcast. That's Jerry Goldsmith, isn't it? And I could even hear little influences like that, the kind of horny stuff, the horns and all of that sort of stuff. I was like, oh man, that sounds a bit like Rambo. That's mental.
I swear we had a look at like his list, and it was just like a ridiculously long list of.
But it's huge. No, I mean, Planet of the Apes in the 60s, which was a really sort of avant-garde...
Jerry Goldsmith did the music for Planet of the Apes in the 60s?
Yeah, so very experimental piece, and then, huge... But I think he was sort of... Total Recall, yeah amazing. Yeah. But very much a sort of a John Williams... he was almost John Williams, but he did, like, Star Trek instead of Star Wars. He did Supergirl instead of Superman.
Is that right? Did he do Supergirl?
Yeah.
I love that comparison.
It's a great score, but
that's a great comparison.
But I think that's the other aspect of the music. Just like with the effect, not to desperately try and justify the layers that we've all agreed this film has, but
I didn't even realise it had. But yeah,
but he since the 60s he was experimenting with electronics in his scores, and this one is a mix of orchestral and electronics. And it was I think by design it's sort of there's computer effects, there's computers in it, there's aliens, so we'll have a bit of both. The orchestral stuff keeps it very sort of grounded and human, but the electronics add that other sort of element, but they work really well together because he's amazing.
But yeah, to be honest, I was surprised at how much I didn't notice the soundtrack during this film. When you said, when we first started this, it was Jerry Goldsmith, I was like, oh my God, I didn't even clock that.
I thought it was too high in the mix. That was one of my criticisms, is the music, although it's amazing, I felt like it drowns out the dialogue at times. So you got the music, obviously quite a lot higher than some of the conversations that are happening, unless it was just my TV. But I felt like, oh man, the mix sounds like quite indulgent of the music rather than actually focusing on all the layers that it supposedly has.
I wouldn't be surprised because, they were collaborators. He absolutely relied on Goldsmith to save his films. And this is my favourite Goldsmith score. This is possibly my favourite film score.
Wow.
And, yeah. And, Joe Dante going, I've not made the film I wanted to make, but that's okay because Goldsmith's going to save it. He will make something of this film.
Yeah.
So I think they may well have gone, do you know what? Just let's have it a bit...
Crank it.
A bit higher.
I need to go back and listen to the soundtrack, but sorry, go on.
Yeah, there's a full an expansion of the score without the songs, and so you can hear pretty much the whole thing, and it's lovely.
Nige, give us some trivia.
Nige's trivia.
So we've touched upon elements of this already, but the film was in a prolonged editing phase when the studio moved up that release date. I think we said it was from late August to early July. That's why the theatrical release was a result of just advanced editing, not finished to Dante's satisfaction. He was basically told, you have to release kind of what you've got.
Bloody hell.
They wanted to take advantage of that busy kind of summer market, and they just said there was like half an hour of footage that was just left completely on a cutting room floor. That original cut was like 3 hours 15 minutes. There was stuff that had to be redubbed. It was just a complete mess. And he's kind of said since that whilst it's kind of got this like cult following and people love it, he's just doesn't want to go back and watch it himself. He said, it's not the movie that I wanted to make. It's the movie I got to make up to a certain point and then just had to stop. And for him, it must be incredibly frustrating to have this kind of idea of what he wanted to produce and what it was going to end up like, and it just be so different. So yeah, and really, he got the film off the back of Gremlins. Like we mentioned, sort of Wolfgang Peterson was attached to this. He actually wanted to film it in Germany, which the studio balked at, and so he ended up doing another film instead, and they got him in to do it. And as I said, there wasn't a third act. I think in the original script, like the kids went off went to this planet, and they just go and play baseball on this planet, so just engage in like kid activities, which kind of makes no real sense. I mean, that was the plot, but there's no payoff, like you said. And Dante...
Space baseball.
Exactly, space baseball. Yeah, Spaceballs. And that's where Mel Brooks got the idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were kind of left in this really awkward situation where you produce a film and it's not really what anyone wanted. And again, as Ben said at the start, I think it kind of made... Well, I think I was looking at this earlier. So for a film that actually cost probably more than you would expect it to. So at the time, even though it was rushed, it was between like 20 and 25 million. You got to bear in mind the special effects that they had, the costumes, which for the aliens, for me, it was like, I recognise those costumes, but I don't remember this from the film, which was quite strange. But it only made just under 10, so it didn't even make half of its budget back. So it's a massive flop. And I think Dante's career, like things like Matinee, which I really enjoy with John Goodman in, he did these kind of cultish films that had a following, but they never really made money, sort of Gremlins aside. Maybe The Howling did as well, but again, that was shot for such a small amount at the time. So he was saying they shot it very quickly anyway, and at certain points the paint on the sets was actually wet, and when the kids first stepped into the spaceship, they actually sunk into it because the cement wasn't even dry. Like, these are the kind of things that they were up against. So I imagine it was quite a chaotic set, although not as bad as The Crow that we discussed obviously in a previous film in terms of cutting corners. But a few other bits of trivia. We kind of mentioned that the drive-through as well, so you have that kind of fake film, and as part of that fake film there's an actor called Robert Picardo who, that's who I recognise. Yeah, possibly best known from being in like a bunch of Star Trek stuff like Voyager. I think he's in First Contact as well. He's like the Doctor. He actually also shows up as one of the aliens.
Right.
And he's
the boy one.
Exactly.
Two of the aliens.
Does he play both of them?
He's the dad as well.
Oh, he is the dad. Well,
yeah.
Oh, he's the dad.
He actually said the alien makeup was one of the most uncomfortable things he's ever worn on a film. And like he said, it was like the whack makeup apparently was like having a typewriter balance on his head, and the father was like balancing a television. So obviously you can imagine the sizes, and the televisions in the 80s as well were bigs. So whilst the crew were enjoying lunch, he would have to sit there and take the pain, which apparently drew him to tears and caused open lesions on his head. So yeah, let's talk about committing. Right, couple of last bits of trivia. So we kind of mentioned like Joe Dante obviously referencing a bunch of other films. He also references his own films. So when the helicopter pilot, as we've obviously previously discussed, being one of his almost alter actors, one of the headlines says Kingston Falls riot still unexplained. Now Kingston Falls is of course the little town that Gremlins is set in. The riot of course is the Gremlins. And then the same newspaper that references that, there's also a headline that says a fire at the colony is suspected arson. Now this is where The Howling was set. So he's nodded to both of his own films via a newspaper.
I love that.
That's quite cool. And then there's a little bit of end credits. I don't know if you guys stuck around for the credits, but there's like a joke and then the closing credits. Now in the original theatrical cut, Whack actually breaks the fourth wall and remarks to the people in the theatre like that you can still smell the popcorn, for instance. It's almost like the Ferris Bueller style.
Nige's trivia, nicely done. Nicely done. Before we get to our review, I think there's only one place to start, and that is with Ben Tunningley. What do you think of this film, and what is your rating out of 10? I mean,
it's interesting. I automatically feel this is a sort of 9 out of 10. It means a lot to me. because of when the circumstances in which I saw it originally, the fact that I've lived with it for so long, the fact that it's got my favourite composer scoring it, my favourite director directing it, some great performances from unexpected places, some great ideas in it. It was really interesting. I watched it, I think, 6 months ago because a new Blu-ray came out with some other bits and pieces. There was a lovely interview with Ethan Hawke where he's saying it meant so much to him. He had a great time on the film. He owes Joe Dante a lot, which is really sweet of him to sort of be involved in the bit of behind the scenes documentary 40 years later. But for all that, I watched it the other day, and man, those bits that haven't aged well have really not aged well. And so my question is, where do you draw the line? There's the discussion that's often had about, separating the art from the artist when we've got some very sort of strange characters making art, and can you still enjoy their work? Can you still enjoy something like this despite its flaws? And I just don't know. We were until very recently in an age where the streamers were, like Disney, were putting disclaimers on some of their really old material, just to say, we're not censoring it, but just so as you know, this is of its time. And in a way, it feels like, oh man, this needs that, because it's a bit of a shocker. So I was just debating, do I dock it a point for terrible sexual politics? Should I dock all its points for terrible sexual politics? So the caveat is, what we've discussed. I think if I was ever to show it to anyone in earnest, I probably would flag right at the beginning that's an issue, because it doesn't sit well. That aside, it's 9 out of 10 for the film, 10 out of 10 for the score.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. Nice. Big score. I'm sure we're going to raise that. Who wants to go next?
I don't want to shit over Ben's connection to this movie. I'm happy to go.
But here I go.
Here I am. But here I go. Yeah, bring it on. No, I totally know where Ben's coming from. I think it's like any of these movies we've talked about before. When you have that connection, how you experience a movie when you see it, especially as a child, you will have such a different connection to people. Like, I know this is a slightly older age movie, but I was going to reference Mrs. Doubtfire. Yeah. When I watched this movie, you guys love Mrs. Doubtfire because you saw it about the right age. Me, I didn't see it until we did it for the podcast, and I was just like, I get where you're coming from, but for me it just didn't hit in the same way. And you can say that about special. Imagine like showing a kid now something like Goonies. I mean, it's showing a kid any film longer than a TikTok video, Grandpa says. But no, when you show like a kid Goonies or something, they'll be like, this is kind of they just go.
It's like that scene from Back to the Future. You use your hands, it's like a baby's toy.
I just go... The reason I bring up Goonies as well is because I just kept thinking, watching this film, that it has certain elements, almost like you could do like an outer space Goonies or something. But also the biggest problem I have with this film is I just find the pacing, it's really strange. Like... I know it's unfair to compare it to other movies, but like with Goonies as a kids film, probably the same target audience. I think Ben would agree with that, with like Goonies and this. Goonies straight away into the action, halfway through, well, I'd say within the first third of the movie, we've met the Fratellis. The second act, we're on this adventure. The third act, the big finale. This film has such a strange structure. As a kids movie, I obviously Ben connected with this, but I can imagine that if I'd seen this as a kid, I'd have been like, space adventure, great, but I'd have been bored throughout quite a bit of it. And even as a kid, I still wanted that satisfying, I'm not saying space battle at the end, but some sort of conclusion. And it just felt like the film just kind of petered out towards the end. I as an adult, I did like the end of the movie because it was so unexpected that, you know, the aliens are kids and they're explorers too. And like we've talked about, the reason they haven't connected with any Earthlings is because they fear Earthlings because of their exposure to TV. I'm going to kind of sit on the fence with this one. I think I'm going to go for a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, fair enough. Nige?
Yeah, for me, I feel like this is a film that's got all the ingredients that I should love it. Like Ethan Hawke, huge fan of. River Phoenix, as we mentioned. Like Dick Miller as well. I'm a huge Joe Dante fan, which is why I kind of sought this film out. And I kind of remember watching it the first time I watched it, and I got about 2/3 of the way through, so they haven't actually met the aliens, and I turned it off because I just wasn't getting into it. I didn't find it interesting. It didn't really sort of suck me in, engaged like heavily with it. It just didn't quite work. And again, I think that was because of the age I was watching it. I'm in my sort of late 30s. I'm not in my sort of early teens. But when I went back and watched it again, I was actually quite surprised at how much I enjoyed like the building at the start. Like you've obviously mentioned the Goonies. I think Monster Squad's a good example as well of like sort of bringing kids together and creating that kind of environment. And maybe it doesn't work that well. It's a little bit clunky, but I enjoyed it enough that it was taking me along for the ride. And again, when they get the spaceship flying, and like it didn't drag as much the second time I watched it. And I was there. I was like, wow, where is this going to go? And so when they land on the spaceship, I'm like, right, the payoff. And my God, the payoff, I hated it. I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, I was kind of confused, kind of disappointed, just like, it just felt like a rambling mess. And it definitely felt to me as a film that they started and they had this idea and they just didn't know how to land it. And they didn't. And from that point on, the rest for me is like a washout. And I've kind of been quite vocal about the fact if a film ends badly, it leaves that kind of sour taste. But there is enough about this film to still not say it's like dreadful or anything like that. I can understand why people enjoy it. There's the questionable moments, as I mentioned as well. Like the soundtrack, I didn't really pick up on that well when I watched it, so I will be interested to kind of go back and kind of revisit that maybe in isolation, maybe just listen to the soundtrack without the film and see sort of what I think of it. But yeah, I just similar to Etok in the sense, like for me, it's not a film I think I would go back and watch again. So just like Etok as well, I'm going to go for a 5 out of 10. It's just, unfortunately, Explorers, I just got lost.
I did it. Nice.
Very nice.
I was actually watching towards the end. I was watching Smith's eyes, and I could almost see Smith going, "What the fuck am I going to give this?"
So yeah, I think like Etok said right at the beginning, never heard of this film, but it's really weird because I felt like it was very familiar, you know, like we've said, you know, like some of the films you've referenced, all of you, Goonies, Stand By Me, even like some of the ones that are maybe not as good as those films, like Flight the Navigator and Batteries Not Included and Never Ending Story. You know, they're all that kind of like 80s adventure film, always centering around that kind of like young boy thing, and especially when it resonates with you when you are that age and you are that young boy. You know, and I totally get it. I totally get why people absolutely love this film, I think. But
even though you didn't get the end of it. Sorry.
Well, no, yeah. I really enjoyed the first kind of like 2 acts. I think this can be broken down into like 3 acts, right? Which a lot of films should be, or can be, or will be. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think like you've all said, like there's some definitely questionable moments. I really hated the love interest, despite the kind of, you know, the obvious thing with it being like the outdatedness. I just think the whole thing was totally unnecessary to the plot of the film. The music I appreciated right from the off, and you know, I didn't necessarily know that Jerry Goldsmith did it straight away, but I was just like, oh man, it sounds so familiar. It feels like I've listened to this music before, even though I'd never seen the film. And I you know, like you said, Ben, the music is a 10 out of 10. I thought it was outstanding, and you know, the fact that they dialed it up potentially in the mix kind of makes sense. River Phoenix is totally miscast for me. I think that whole family feels like too comic in the film, and it maybe if you're younger watching that film, you kind of get that. But for me, like it just it found just too silly, and it wasn't funny, but it was almost a bit slapstick with the father, and he was like, oh, here we go. It's like a caricature and playing the German thing, like with all the stereotypes. So yeah, the writing can be quite clunky in this film. But for me, the biggest problem, like Nige, is this bit where they land on the spaceship. These green alien things that look like snails are a bit wet come out. Okay, they look kind of cool, but I was so lost to the point where when you said there was a twist, I was like, what the fuck are these guys talking about twist? I lost so much interest in this that I didn't really care. So yeah, like score-wise, like I know I've been quite animated in this, but I agree with Nige and Ito. Like I wrote down a 5, and like I think it's got enough in it to be a decent enough film. But yeah, it was what it was. I think for me. Sorry, Ben. How do you feel about those criticisms from all?
No, I knew. I think when I suggested it, I was high on the power of having got you guys to watch and endure and discuss Buckaroo Banzai, and I was
Power corrupts.
Right.
Oh no!
Yeah, so it's got to be Explorers. It was the first thing I thought of, and watching it the other day, I was like, oh man, they are going to be so angry.
I don't think.
And you're not. So no. And
no, don't worry. But I'll always live in infamy for making them watch a film called The Big Hit.
There's been plenty of worse films that we've done. First up, Ben, thank you so much for coming on Off Radar.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
You fitted in like a green snail alien to our little clan. And,
it's been an absolute honour. Thank you for having me. I can only apologise.
And thank you guys for listening. Give us another film to watch. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Follow us on YouTube. We've got lots of shorts and various
MySpace.
stuff. We're on MySpace, of course, or outer
TikTok.
space, inner space. We're in space.
Hey, inner space,
and,
office space,
office space, and
I feel like you haven't asked everyone to sort of sending their reviews of Explorer, because you feel like no one else has watched this film. It's like, tell us what you thought.
Yeah,
you've never seen
I'd be interested to. I guess the people listening to this might be fans of it, so I'd be interested to hear what you guys think of this. So give us your rating. Do you fancy sending us a film to review, or letting us know your thoughts on a film that we have discussed? All of your comments will be read out in our end of season leaderboard episode. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Message us on Facebook. All links and info in the description down below.
Do it! Do it!